Hi, I'm Sarah Beth with Warner Brothers.
Hi, Sarah Beth. How are you?
I'm very well. So great to chat with you.
Oh,
Hope all
thank
is
you.
good with you. All right, we'll just dive in, keep it fun, keep it light. Okay, cool. So, congratulations on the 20th anniversary of Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, or
Thank you.
Philosopher's Stone, if you like that one. Very exciting. I'm a huge fan, so I'm honored to talk to you
Oh,
today.
thank you so
Um,
much.
not to remind us of our very real mortality, but it has been 20 years since Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone was released. How do you feel about that?
It really honestly feels like it was just yesterday. I mean, I know that sounds like a standard generic answer, but I really can remember being on that set, specific days, great memories. I have really nothing but great memories of working on that film. So it's hard to believe that it's 20 years, but there's also a sense of pride in knowing that people still love the movie 20 years later.
Exactly. Exactly. It's amazing. And had you read the book before you started on the project?
Oh yeah, I mean, my daughter, who back in the day when she got Sorcerer's Stone, asked me to read it. I said no. She said, Dad, Chamber of Secrets would be a great movie too. I said no. Finally, on Prisoner of Azkaban, she convinced me to read the book. So I read all three in a couple of days, and I fell in love with them. And I knew I had to make this movie. And that's unfortunately there were 30 other directors that felt the same way. So I feel very lucky that I got the job.
It worked out. It worked out. What was it specifically about the book or just the story that made you want to work on this film?
I just related to it. I think I related to the fact that what I said, why are children connecting to this particular character? And it's because it's a bit of wish fulfillment. I mean, who doesn't dream about leaving their dreary life to become a wizard and go to Hogwarts? I think that's one of the great wish fulfillment stories. So I was dying to tell it.
That's awesome. One thing that really resonates, I think, with fans, it's very clear that this cast felt like a family. They look like a family, they feel like a family. We're so connected to these characters and
Mm-hmm.
the actors that play them. Did you get that same sense while you were working on this film?
Um, yeah, I mean, that sense of camaraderie had to develop over the course of the first film. I think when, the first film took 160 days to shoot. Chamber of Secrets was another 160 days. And in that time, you're talking 320 days of bonding. The kids really bonded and became very close, as well as the adult actors. And I've never seen anything like it. You've never, I mean, there are very few, with the exception of Star Wars, Lord of the Rings, there are very few series that have run this long, 8 films. And I think you develop that sense of camaraderie when you work that long with someone.
Yeah, it was definitely very apparent that, that bonding time was there. Um, as a fan, I think it's really unique, and I'm sure you've heard this discussed as well, that the young actors were unknown. They weren't recognizable faces, and I
Mm-hmm.
think that brought something really special to the film. So I'm curious, what qualities did casting those young characters, those young actors as these characters, kind of play into the whole structure of the film?
Well, it's interesting because once, when I'd done Home Alone, Macaulay Culkin had not had a lot of experience. He had done one film, and what he brought to that was this sense of naturalism and reality and humor. And I wanted to do that with the Potter kids as well. I didn't want child actors who had had too much experience because they tend to uh, go to their bag of tricks. And so what you get is not a tremendously naturalistic performance. With these kids who had never been on a film set before, it was pure raw talent. And basically the first movie was acting class for them. So it was a long process. Everybody, Dan was on the set the first day, Rupert, Emma, Malfoy, everyone's smiling because they're in a Harry Potter movie. So they'd say a line, then they'd smile and look at the camera. So it took us several months to get beyond that general excitement. But what you see on camera is real, and they're honest performances.
That's awesome. Do you have a favorite story from working with the younger actors on this film?
In terms of the younger actors, it was the older actors that provided me with a tremendous amount of stories. Richard Harris, particularly, On his first day of shooting as Dumbledore, he was scheduled to do the final scene in the movie where Dumbledore explains the entire plot of the movie, essentially, to Harry. And he walks into the room and he says, "What are we doing in the hospital room?" And I said, "Well, that's the scene we're shooting today. It was on the schedule. It's been on the schedule for 2 months." He said, "Oh dear boy, I haven't learned that scene. I learned another scene." And I said, "Well, we haven't even built that set yet." So we basically had to shoot that scene paragraph by paragraph because it was a 7.5-page scene, I think.
That's awesome. So sorry about the sirens. I'll mute just for a second for them to pass. So sorry about that.
Okay.
Next question. The visuals from the Harry Potter films are so iconic. How involved were you in creating these looks and these sets?
I mean, it was essentially my job, it was to create this world. You can imagine the intimidation factor when you realize you got the eyes of billions of people on this film. We could have really created something that no one liked, and I'd have to leave the country. So I was in a situation where I really wanted to create what I saw in my own head, but also work closely with J.K. Rowling and see, and sort of pick her brain about what she was seeing. There was plenty of description in the books, but for me to be able to bring it to life, it was working with an incredibly talented production designer, Stuart Craig, who shared the same vision that I did, and realizing that we had to make sets that were going to withstand 7, we thought it was 7 movies, it eventually became 8, but withstand 7 films. And the proudest thing for me is Leavesden Studios in London, the sets are still standing. So you could presumably go back and shoot a Harry Potter movie if you wanted to.
Let's go right now. Let's do another.
Yeah.
I mean, for me personally, I'm a big fan of practical sets. I think that is it's such a beautiful thing to see on screen when you have your cast interacting with a real set. And you did such a great job with that. Did you have a favorite set to shoot on?
It would have to be the Great Hall because it was a situation where it was a beautiful set. There were hundreds of different angles to shoot from. And when we first saw it, the first shot we did in the Great Hall were all of the kids arriving and the camera cranes, and we see the Great Hall with all the candles hanging there. And it was just a magical, magical shot. And I loved every scene we did in the Great Hall. But on that first day, after 2 takes, the candles started to drop because the fire was burning through the monofilament that was holding them. So we had to basically recreate the other scenes with CGI candles. But that very first scene that you see in the film, they're all practical candles.
It's amazing. That's such a goosebumps moment when they first enter the Great Hall. So very, very well done. What are your thoughts on the legacy of this film and how it still very strongly resonates with so many different audiences 20 years later?
I honestly think it has something to do with the fact that we intended to make a film that would feel timeless. A film that didn't feel like it was made, I wanted the audience to feel as if that film could have been made 40 years ago, 70 years ago, or yesterday. For me, it was just the fact that when you turn that film on 20 years down the road, it still felt as fresh as the day it was released. And that was the goal for me, that I shared with all my department heads. I said, this is the kind of film we have to make. So I do think that it was our intention. I'm glad it worked. You never know, but it did work in this particular situation.
Absolutely. Absolutely. My final question before I let you go, have you been sorted properly and which house are you in?
I haven't been sorted properly, but I have been, I did get an inscribed version of, it was Philosopher's Stone, the British version of the book by J.K. Rowling, and she said I would be in Gryffindor in her inscription. So I've always thought, well, that's the person who should be sorting me. So
exactly. I think that counts. I'm also a proud Gryffindor, so we're in the same house, same colors.
excellent.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much, Chris. This was such a treat.
Thanks a lot.
Congratulations again on 20
Thank
years.
you.
And
That was fun. Thank you.
more. Yeah, of course. Have a good one.
You too.
E aí, gostou do vídeo? Então se inscreva no Warner Play clicando aqui e a gente deixou outras 2 sugestões de vídeo para você.